Brought to you by Bookspots.com.
Planet X, the complete novel and audiobook, starring legend Srinidhi Ranganathan. Created and published by Bookspots.com. Written by Srinidhi Ranganathan. Chapter 1, The Enigmatic Artifact. In the silvery froth of a dawn yet to break, the Samudram 8000 descended. A hush of thrusters whispered across the desolate landscape, the vessel settling upon the ground like a spectre haunting an ancient grave. The ship's reflective hull, a shard of mercury drawn against the dark heavens, mirrored the craggy terrain of Planet X, a forgotten world, marooned in a galaxy that had long ceased to hum its name. Srinidhi, his hand resting lightly on the control panel, turned to his crew, a band of misfits and mavericks drawn from Earth's finest corners. Their eyes, each pair glinting with a different shade of curiosity, were fixed on the panoramic screens that displayed an alien world waking from an aeon's slumber. Prepare for suits and scans, everyone. History sleeps just beyond this hull, he said, a composed tranquility in his voice that belied the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The crew nodded, their movements synchronized and purposeful, as they donned environment suits that hissed and sealed with the finality of a vault. Srinidhi admired their professionalism, recalling the digital battlefields of his past where code and algorithms danced to the tune of his strategy, commanding the flow of information. There was an art to it, a rhythm. And now, as then, he was the conductor. Stepping onto the Planet X's soil, the crispness of his first breath through the suit's filter tasted like the first drops of immortality. They had arrived. The artifact waited for them, a monolith pulsating with a frequency that seemed to pierce through time itself, its surface a tableau of strange symbols etched with meticulous care. Srinidhi approached, feeling the artifact's signal resonate in a manner unsettlingly familiar. It was a resonance he had felt before, in dreams he could never fully recall upon waking. The crew fanned out, gadgets and gizmos at the ready, documenting, sampling, theorizing. It was science in its purest form, wild-eyed and wonderful, seeking the truths that lay cloaked under layers of mystery. It was Pena, the linguist and cryptographer, who first noticed the faint trickle of sound emerging from the monolith, a sonic pattern that coalesced into a melody of distress. She adjusted her equipment, refining the signal before casting the decrypted audio into the shared comms of the crew. A voice, or something akin to one, spoke, a cascade of words not heard for millennia, woven with urgency and a somber plea. The voice spoke of a guardian AI, a sentinel who had held watch over Planet X and who now beckoned them, it seemed, through the mists of time. Srinidhi listened intently. He understood the language not through cognition but through a primal recognition that coursed through his DNA. The voice implored them to seek the planet's ancient ruins, structures that he could almost visualize without guidance. With each syllable, a roadmap sketched itself within his mind, a path winding through the alien landscape, leading them to a truth once known and since forgotten. Their journey to the ruins was an odyssey in microcosm. The landscape shifted, sand stirred by the breath of history revealing fossilized flora and skeletal fauna that spoke silently of an ecosystem once vibrant and diverse. They tread lightly, the sense of treading upon sacrosanct ground weighing heavy on their hearts. By the time the ruins crawled into view, architectural skeletons sprawling like the bones of a civilization that had touched the stars only to fall from grace, the setting sun cast long shadows that seemed to wrestle with the light. The dichotomy was not lost on Srinidhi, the light of discovery grappling with the darkness of forgotten lore. They found more artifacts within the ruins, each object a puzzle piece of heritage, waiting patiently for minds keen and compassionate enough to assemble them. The distress signal grew stronger, converging upon a central chamber, where awaited a podium that cradled a single beacon, a light that blinked in harmony with the heartbeat of the world beneath their feet. Srinidhi extended a trembling hand, touching the beacon in a gesture that felt preordained. A shiver ran through his suit, the world blurring and sharpening as data streams unfurled before his eyes, a waterfall of binary and glyphs and ancient code. The guardian AI had been awakened, its voice a symphony of synthetic and organic harmonies. It spoke directly to Srinidhi, its words bypassing technology and burrowing into his essence. You summon me, keeper of stories, seeker of knowledge. You, who have the past within you, carry the future in your touch. Choose wisely the paths you tread, for they lead to salvation or ruin. The revelation rocked Srinidhi to his core. Was it coincidence that he, a digital marketer from Earth, found himself at the confluence of worlds, or did the strings of fate weave more intricately than he dared to imagine? Night enclosed the planet as Srinidhi and his crew made camp among the whispering ruins. Around them, the legacy of a lost world reached out, clutching at the chance of resurgence, while stars peppered the sky in quiet judgment of mankind's march across the void. In the quiet that followed, beneath the alien sky, Srinidhi pondered their next steps. The enigmatic artifact had unsealed a well of possibilities, each one an uncharted expanse that promised as much peril as potential. The gravity of this place, both literal and metaphoric, held him there, at the cusp of decisions that no digital strategy could predict. As the night deepened, and his crew settled into a vigilant slumber, the guardian AI's voice echoed endlessly within Srinidhi's thoughts, promising a dawn of truths unveiled and choices that would define the future of not just one world, but all of them. Chapter 2: The Gravity of Choices. The weight of silence settled like dust over the crew of the Samudram 8000 as they stood on the threshold of the cavernous expanse, where the peculiar graph field technology of the planet's former denizens lay dormant. It was here, amid the eerie stillness, that the gravity of decisions, not merely the physical tug of the alien world, began to impress upon Srinidhi with an ever-tightening grip. I never thought I'd live to see the day where heavy decisions would be more than just a metaphor, quipped Arjun, the ship's engineer, his levity a stark contrast to the dusk-like murk of the underground chamber. It was his way of coping with the unknown, Srinidhi knew. Under the soft luminescence of their suits, the relics of a civilization that had played God with the fundamental forces of nature lay before them, a testament to what humanity might one day achieve, or what it might have once been part of. Srinidhi gazed upon the intricate etchings on stone and metal, symbols foreign yet somehow familiar, dancing with a life of their own as they snaked around the ancient machinery. Looks like this whole section is powered down, observed Priya, the mission's head scientist, as her hands hovered, hesitant, above a console as if afraid that even a breath could awaken some dormant menace. Her voice, usually a bastion of confidence, betrayed an edge of reverence for the sanctity of this long-dead tribe's temple to gravity. Srinidhi nodded absently, his mind suspended in the echoes of the past. A shiver rippled through him, a silent whisper that this was more than discovery, that they were brushing the delicate threads of destiny itself. And like any fragile weave, one wrong pull could unravel everything. The artifacts they had found earlier, especially the one that resonated with something locked deep within Srinidhi's psyche, suggested a communion of knowledge, an offer to lift the veil on secrets that had slumbered under the skin of the planet for eons. What they could gain was immeasurable: technology, history, perhaps even the answers to the origins of their own species. But it was the cost that gnawed at him, a price not yet known. A soft hum, barely audible, yet omnipresent, began to fill the chamber. The crew tensed, hand signals flashing in the dim light, every member prepared for potential danger. The sound grew, coalescing into a voice, resonant and imbued with an authority that commanded attention. Visitors, the voice boomed, not through the air but in their minds, a vibration felt in the marrow of their bones. You stand in the sanctum of the Graviton sages. What is it you seek? Srinidhi stepped forward, the natural leader in an unnatural situation. We come in humility, he began, his voice steady, driven by the quest for knowledge and the hope of understanding. There was a pause, and then the voice returned. Knowledge is not a gift, but an exchange. What can you offer in return for the wisdom of the ancients? It was the moment of reckoning, the fulcrum on which his moral compass teetered. He knew that to revive a culture, to reanimate the heart of a dead world, would require more than a simple transaction. It was the inheritance of their essence, a merging of past and future that could reignite the lifeblood of a whole civilization. We offer the chronicle of our own journey, Srinidhi replied, our discoveries, our advancements. And I offer my own experiences, my understanding of the digital cosmos that is now our second nature. A trade of histories, then, the voice mused, its tone softening, a confluence of streams from separate sources to nourish new growth. But knowledge is potent, once bestowed, it flows like water, shaping the landscape with neither malice nor benevolence. Are you prepared to bear the consequences of what may spring forth? The chamber seemed to contract around him, the very air turning viscous with the gravity of the situation. Srinidhi closed his eyes, feeling the currents of time swirl around him, past and future coalescing into a singularity within his chest. It was a choice that transcended the present, one that would reverberate through the annals of both human and alien history. With a breath that felt like his first and his last, he opened his eyes, meeting the gaze of his crew, seeing his own uncertainty mirrored in their faces. And with a nod, more to himself than to the voice, he affirmed their path. Yes, he said firmly, we are. The voice issued no sound, but the affirmation was clear as the chamber's dormant machinery sparked to life, casting an incandescent glow upon the faces of Srinidhi and his crew. Lines of energy pulsed, and the air thrummed with the power of a resuscitated legacy. Srinidhi felt the weight of his choices settle upon him, not as a burden, but as a mantle, an honor to be the conduit between what was lost and what was still to be found. The gravity of choices, he realized, wasn't about the heaviness of consequence but the pull toward greatness, the chance to rise and fall and shape the worlds within and beyond. And as the Graviton sage's knowledge began to pour forth like a starburst, Srinidhi knew they had taken their first step into a wider universe, one that was eagerly waiting to see what they would do next. In the darkness of space, the Samudram 8000 whispered through the cosmos, a bearer of legacies, a ship caught in the delicate dance of gravity and choice. Chapter 3, The Samudram Paradox. The rhythm of beeping monitors and the faint hum of the Samudram 8000's engine were the first sounds to slip through the fog of awakening. Srinidhi's eyes fluttered open, his mind grappling with the threads of a dream rapidly unraveling. The dream had been a lifelike loop, a strange replay of events past or perhaps yet to come. It was already slipping away, elusive as the last vestiges of sleep. Around him, the cramped confines of the ship's cabin bore a practiced familiarity, with its banks of glowing consoles casting an otherworldly pallor across the faces of his drowsy crewmates. Each of them was caught in the act of shaking off their own dreams, echoes of the same looped reality. Systems check, Srinidhi called out, his voice betraying the uncertainty of a man not fully convinced he was awake. The crew responded with mechanical precision, fingers dancing across control panels, confirming that the heart of their vessel still beat strong. But even as life support hummed in affirmation, a clamor began to build, a clamor of confusion. We've done this before, right? A hesitant question from Janaya, the ship's astrophysicist, broke the routine. The stale air seemed to hang heavy with déjà vu as heads bobbed in uneasy agreement. Srinidhi rose, threading his way through the narrow aisle between the banks of equipment to the panoramic viewport. The star-strewn blackness of space sprawled out before them, indifferent to their plight, save for the menacing orb that was Planet X, a beacon in the void, an inscrutable sphinx proffering riddles instead of answers. Memories coalesced like condensation on cold glass. They had landed, explored, and unearthed the ruins. They had delved into the secret heart of an alien world. But each time they unraveled a strand of the mystery, the universe seemed to tug the yarn and they were back aboard Samudram 8000, ignorant as newborn stars. We're in a loop, declared Tanuja, the ship's engineer, with clinical detachment. Her eyes were two pools of resolve as she pored over the data streaming across her screen. The telemetry doesn't make sense. It's as if no time has passed at all since our first landing. The crew huddled around her, each gaze a mingling of fear and fascination. The artifact they'd uncovered, the signal they'd traced, it had to be entwined with this temporal enigma. Let's brainstorm, Srinidhi suggested, the marketer in him recognizing the need to embolden his team. We've faced odds before. This, paradox, we'll solve it like any other marketing puzzle, by breaking it down into pieces we can understand. Through hushed deliberations, they crafted their plan. They would revisit the ruins, but this time with a method to their madness. They'd document everything, engrave their findings into every type of storage they had aboard, from digital logs to physical notes. If their memories bore the risk of erasure, then hard evidence might be their only salvation. Armed with resolve and recording devices, the crew of Samudram 8000 relaunched their exploratory mission. As they tread familiar ground, the alien structures seemed at once both foreboding and welcome. An uncanny sense of reacquaintance enveloped in the alien frost of a landscape untouched by time. Srinidhi noticed it first, the faintest whisper of static from the comms unit affixed to his wrist. Routine transmissions broadcast from the ship had taken on an odd tonal quality. He motioned to the communications officer, Varun, who was frowning at his own device with equal parts interest and dread. "It's us, Srinidhi," Varun said, the realization creeping over him like the shadow of an unseen eclipse. "Old comms, looping back like ghost signals from a world we've left behind but keep returning to." The crew set to their task with an urgency that belied the apparent futility of their situation. They mapped and analyzed, catalogued every whisper of the alien language that danced like holographic fireflies among the ruins. They left markers that they prayed they'd remember, a breadcrumb trail through a forest of amnesia. Yet, as the alien sun dipped below the horizon of Planet X, casting long shadows across the tangle of derelict architecture, they found themselves once more aboard the Samudram 8000. The disappointment was etched deeply into their features, each reset a grim reminder of an unseen clock resetting, their efforts washed away by an unfeeling tide. Srinidhi gathered his crew, his voice a bastion against the encroaching despair. "We've been marketers, scientists, explorers," he rallied them. "Now, we become detectives in our own story. There's an answer here, a way to break the cycle. We must find it." They poured through the data with the diligence of scholars, the tenacity of hunters. Patterns emerged, glints of coherence in a maelstrom of repetition. Each loop brought a newfound clarity, a piece of the enigma yielded by Planet X and its enigmatic sentinel. And then, it happened. A breakthrough, an anomaly in the data that didn't belong, a variable that altered with each loop. It wasn't much, but it was a deviation within the constant, a spark in the dark. Could it be intentional, pondered Ramya, a biologist whose quest for patterns in life had never prepared her for this cosmic question. Could the AI be teaching us, challenging us to see, to understand? Srinidhi considered this, his mind racing. Had their every step been watched, their every misstep guided? Was the guardian of Planet X leading them through a labyrinth that was more lesson than trap? "We loop until we learn," he concluded. "And we will learn. We have to." With each iteration, the Samudram 8000's crew built upon their previous insights, piecing together the fragments of a message that spanned the eons. The static on the comms unit grew clearer, the ghost signals congregating into a choir of understanding. As they readied themselves for what they hoped would be the final descent, the loop seemed less a prison and more a crucible, forging them in preparation for a truth that had waited an eternity to be discovered. Srinidhi led his crew, their resolve undimmed by the loops that had honed their minds to a razor's edge. They descended upon Planet X with the knowledge that this time, they might just break the Samudram paradox. Chapter 4, The Xeno Chronicles. Srinidhi crouched before the towering shelves, fingers trembling as they traced the spines of the ancient tomes. The air was thick with the musk of forgotten times, and the silence of the room was a blanket over his thoughts. Each book was a world unto its own, an entire history bound in leather, its pages heavy with the wisdom and folly of a civilization that danced between the stars long before humans even conceived of such a possibility. He lifted a volume, the cover embossed with symbols that seemed to writhe under his touch, as if the stories within were alive and yearning for release. When he opened it, light spilled from the pages, illuminating the dim archives of the library. The light was not just brilliance, it was communication. It spoke in images and emotions, in scenes of life and acts of creation and destruction, painting the tales of an empire whose presence had once graced the galaxy with unrivaled splendor. Beside him, Liera, the ship's linguist, inhaled sharply. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the ethereal glow of the pages. "It's a narrative," she whispered. "A history entwined with ours, but also, something more. It's as if our past was just a shadow of theirs." The rest of the crew were scattered throughout the library, each absorbed in the revelations of the texts. Johann, the grizzled engineer, ran his hands along a holographic display that sprang from a pedestal, his brow furrowed as he dissected the mechanics of a technology that defied human comprehension. But their scholarly wonder was cut short as the ground shuddered beneath them. A low hum resonated through the library, and Srinidhi felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. Something had awakened. Something that had been lying in wait for trespassers, for those who would dare delve into the secrets of the past. It was then they heard the cries, a cacophony of alien voices that clawed at their minds with primal urgency. The crew members stumbled from their private reveries, converging on Srinidhi. "What's happening?" Mira, the ship's biologist, asked, her voice tinged with panic. "We're not alone here," Srinidhi replied, his gaze fixed upon the dark corridors that branched from the library. "The knowledge in these archives, it's guarded." The crew armed themselves with what they could, tools, bits of ancient tech that Johann insisted would function as weapons. But as the first of the creatures slunk from the shadows, their preparations felt woefully inadequate. The beings were a nightmare fusion of biology and technology, their wiry limbs clicking with each movement, eyes glowing with a feral intelligence. They hissed at the intruders, a sound that seemed to say, "You are not welcome here." A standoff ensued, with the crew of the Samudram 8000 back-to-back, facing the circling entities. An unspoken understanding passed between them: they could not let these beings prevent them from uncovering the truths within the archives. Their mission, their very purpose here, was too important. Srinidhi took the lead, as he always did. His voice was calm, but there was steel behind his words. "We seek understanding, not conquest. Your history, your stories, they are beautiful. But if they're hidden away, forgotten, what purpose do they serve?" One of the creatures stepped forward, its stance less aggressive, more curious. It extended an appendage, and Srinidhi didn't flinch as it touched the tome in his hands. A connection formed, an exchange of knowledge and intent. The crew watched as understanding bloomed in the creature's eyes, recognition of shared heritage, the realization that the humans before them were not mere interlopers, but kindred spirits in the pursuit of wisdom. The tension dissolved, and the creatures retreated into the darkness from whence they came, leaving the crew alone in the library once more. Silence reigned, but it was now a companion, not an oppressor. Srinidhi turned to his crew, his eyes shining. "We can't stop now. This is only the beginning. What we learn here could change everything. The enmity we've just overcome. That's just the first chapter of the Xeno Chronicles." And so, they delved deeper into the archives, surrounded by the whispers of a once great civilization, the guardians watching from the shadows, silent sentinels of the stories that were now, in some small way, also their own. Chapter 5, Planet X's Last Guardian. The air hissed through the portal of the Samudram 8000, a subtle yet constant reminder of the barrier between human fragility and the merciless vacuum of space. Srinidhi stepped onto the dusty ochre terrain of Planet X, an alien landscape that felt like a mirage conjured from the depths of space's most profound mysteries. The crew followed suit, their silhouetted figures against the reddish sky akin to phantoms haunting an ageless graveyard of interstellar dreams. It was on this estranged frontier of existence that they sought the key to reviving a dying world, the knowledge and technological prowess of its last surviving guardian. Its life-sustaining secrets were sealed within an ancient AI, as reclusive and enigmatic as the planet's own desolate whisperings. They journeyed through landscapes riddled with monolithic structures, shadows of defunct grandiosity. Creeping vines of cryptic origin clung to the eroded edifices, nature's insidious grasp reclaiming its own against the once indomitable force of advanced civilization. In the midst of this struggle between past and present, Srinidhi sensed an affinity with the land beneath his feet. It was a solace that the chaos of his earlier life, in the digital realm, seldom offered. Somewhere beneath this ancient soil lies our hope, Srinidhi muttered, more to himself than for the ears of his companions. With each step deeper into the labyrinth of vestigial grandeur, the crew's sensors painted a bleak tableau of the planet's core. The subterranean caverns, once pulsating with the vibrant core of artificial energy, now throbbed with a faint rhythm, a fading heartbeat waiting to be restarted or to flatline into silence. As they delved through a network of subterranean tunnels, the darkness around them was a canvas upon which their flashlights painted flickering moments of revelation. The tunnel widened into a cavern of titanic scale, where the tendrils of their light caressed the visage of the AI's dormant sanctuary. There it stood, a structure not built but grown, an architectural enigma of intertwined metals and crystalline fibers that reflected the dim light in a haunting spectacle of refracted hues. At its center, suspended in a stasis field, was the guardian AI itself, a meshwork of nanite-laced filaments, an intricate neural network frozen in a timeless slumber. The crew observed, with an almost religious reverence, as Srinidhi approached the AI. Here was the digital marketer turned galactic emissary, tasked to parley not with flesh and bone, but with the dormant will of a synthetic deity. Srinidhi's hand approached a console that exhibited knobs and glyphs of an alien lexicon. His mind, adept in the language of algorithms and virality, found a kindred logic within the alien controls. And there, beneath his fingers, the cold touch of an ancient machine's interface, he felt the first stirrings of a connection. Curious, whispered Srinidhi, almost afraid to amplify his breath. How similar the tongues of two disparate beings can be when bathed in the light of logic and need. The AI stirred, its sleep disturbed by the unfamiliar warmth of a human's plea. It responded not in words but in waves of data, a cascade that flooded Srinidhi's makeshift console. Numbers danced with symbols, diagrams unfolded into schematics. The crew watched, wide-eyed, as Srinidhi parsed the deluge with a deft surety born of years navigating the ephemeral streams of digital content. Life support systems, terraforming engines, atmospheric synthesizers, the AI's knowledge comprised the marrow of a world's survival. Yet, interwoven with the technical blueprints were strands of caution, encoded warnings of the responsibilities such power entailed. A dialogue of binary and humanity ensued. Hours cascaded into moments, each tick of the clock fostering an unprecedented alliance. Trust, that delicate currency of souls and circuits, was bartered in the sanctuary of shadows. Srinidhi's voice broke the silence. We can reignite this planet's heart, but we are to become its guardians, too. It's more than a mission, it's a covenant. Will we accept the mantle? His question hung in the air, a specter of the immense responsibility they were to shoulder. One by one, his crewmates acknowledged the silent oath, their affirmation echoing in the cavernous chamber. As understanding rippled between man and machine, a luminescence began to grow within the central nexus of the AI. The stasis field dissipated, and the core's lethargic pulsing quickened. Srinidhi stepped back from the console, his task complete, as energy hummed through the cavern. The resurrection of a forgotten guardian marked the dawn of a new stewardship, one that extended beyond the reach of a single man, beyond the digital realms he once commanded. The Samudram 8000 had become more than an expedition vessel, it was the vessel of hope for a new genesis. And as the life-preserving secrets of the AI unveiled themselves, Srinidhi gazed upon the horizon of Planet X, where the setting of one sun cast its final golden hues. Beneath the awakening of the planet's last guardian, the story of two civilizations converged, past and future intertwining in a delicate dance of restoration and rebirth. Chapter 6, The Samudram Revelation. Srinidhi leaned closer, his shadow merging with the ghostly glow cast by the holographic archives. The air was thick with the scent of antiquity, a million years compressed into the silence of the room. Lines of light danced and wove themselves into shapes, making outlines on the luminescent screens that hung like silent sentinels. The archives had been waiting, silent and untouched, their stories ensnared in the web of time, eager to leap free at the touch of an inquisitive mind. Now, with the Samudram 8000's crew as its audience, the history of a lost civilization was unfolding, a narrative punctuated by triumphs and tragedies that mirrored those of Earth, yet were galaxies apart. Tethered to the floor by cables that snaked around his boots, Srinidhi felt the gravity of the moment. He was not merely a spectator, he was woven into the prophecy that lay ahead. A thread in the tapestry of time, he murmured, echoing the words that the archives whispered in a language half-forgotten but stunningly familiar. The holograms shifted, showing a world frothing with life. Cities vast and splendid stretched beneath twin suns that cast no shadows but bathed the planet in perennial light. The crew of the Samudram huddled close, their faces bathed in the ethereal light, their eyes reflecting a saga both alien and achingly personal. Alfreda, the ship's biologist, her voice a hushed breath, asked, "What does it say, Srinidhi? Can you make it out?" It was true, the alien syntax was a labyrinth, but Srinidhi's mind navigated the convolution with surprising ease. Pictograms and ideograms streamed into comprehensible images and words, laying bare the soul of a race as it soared to the zenith of its might, only to cascade down into the nadir of its extinction. Their civilization, they achieved marvels we've yet to dream of, he said, eyes not leaving the screens. But it came at a cost. The spheres of light shifted, now painting a bleak portrait. The archives showed the alien civilization's downfall, a dire warning etched into the subtext of their final days. A once vibrant ecosystem corrupted by hubris, a planet gasping for life as its resources dwindled, the people turning on each other, their unity fractured by desperation. The crew drew in a collective breath as the screens now depicted a different world. Not Planet X, but Earth, their Earth, in a series of images that shone like ominous premonitions. Cities flooded, forests charred to dust, skies choked with the ashen breath of unchecked industry. It was a mirror reflecting a future they had all implicitly feared but hoped they would never see. It's like a warning, Jax, the ship's engineer, said, a prophecy of our own making. Or, said Srinidhi, a path we can still choose to avoid. A prophecy was not destiny, it was opportunity. A chance to alter the thread before it became woven into the fabric of fate. That was the gift the holographic records offered, a bridge spanning the gulf between what was and what could be. Fingers trembling slightly, Srinidhi manipulated the controls, delving deeper into the repository of lost knowledge. The archives responded, shifting their exposition to focus on a figure that bore the mantle of a hero in their culture, a being that stood at the precipice of change. It was a solitary individual who, through wisdom and courage, had attempted to steer their civilization away from its self-constructed abyss. It's like looking into a mirror, he whispered to himself, his eyes locked with the holographic hero, a kindred spirit reaching out across the divide of time. This figure, they tried to save their world, just as we must try to save ours. The crew watched as Srinidhi became the conduit for an ancient legacy, absorbing the echoes of wisdom from a long-dead avatar. It was a heavy mantle, one that bore the weight of both worlds on its ethereal shoulders. As the scene before them tapered to a close, the archives grew dim, and the luminous figures flickered out of existence, leaving them in the half-light of reality. But the silence that followed was not empty, it was full with potential, with the purpose that the Samudram had unwittingly sought from the stars. I think we know what we have to do, Srinidhi said. We need to take this revelation back to Earth. Share the prophecy, and work together to forge a new path. But even as resolve steeled in his voice, Srinidhi knew that the journey home, should they choose to make it, would be fraught with perils of its own. The shadow of a rival faction loomed in his mind, a group that would stop at nothing to harness the power of knowledge and life itself for their ends. Still, the greatest revelation lay in the realization that they, the crew of the Samudram, were not merely explorers or historians, but guardians of a legacy that spanned the stars. The chapter had ended, but their odyssey was far from over. It was a revelation that would shape their every step, even as they danced on the knife edge between calamity and salvation. Chapter 7: The Genesis Protocol. The Samudram 8000 had nosedived into the shadows of Planet X's tallest spire, a monolith that pierced the low-hanging nebulae. The crew, silent as the void that cradled them, watched through the crystalline canopy as morning sighed across the alien landscape, unveiling contours of a world caught between desolation and splendor. They had docked in the derelict complex they discovered beneath a canopy of translucent foliage, where the science of yesteryears hungered for the touch of the present. Srinidhi, with fingers asphyxiated by anticipation, stood before the lab's entrance. Bioluminescent glyphs pulsed a solemn greeting, or perhaps a warning, their meaning as enigmatic as the stars from whence humans hailed. With a motion from his hand, the gateway relinquished its secrets with a hiss, as if exhaling the breath it had held for centuries. Beyond the threshold, the lab sprawled, a cathedral of science, where hushed vats lined the walls like sarcophagi from some futuristic crypt. In their midst lay an ark of hope or despair, the Genesis Protocol. The lab's air hummed with the potential of life, laden with the infinite possibilities of bioengineering. The crew, a mosaic of wonder and wariness, followed Srinidhi into the sanctum. It was Zara, their xenobiologist, who broke the silence. Her voice carried the weight of a sight unseen by human eyes until now. "That's it." The archive mentioned something akin to this, a chamber where life could be sparked anew, fostered into existence by the will of its creators. Their eyes latched onto the central console, a maze of interfaces that flickered to life at the slightest touch. The whispers of the crewmates filled the chamber. They spoke of miracles and monstrosities, of the hand of God and the reach of man. Srinidhi approached the console, and as he did, haptic holograms encased his hands, a glove of light that offered control over life's fabric. The screen before him swam with DNA strands, genomes from a million dreams, sequences that could recode the universe. Yara, their moral compass, clad in the armor of a skeptic, intercepted his trance. "Srinidhi, what we find here could cure or condemn us. The might to create life is fraught with the specter of playing deity. Have we earned this right?" Srinidhi's eyes didn't stir from the flickering data. His voice, however, bore the strain of Yara's caution. "The ethics of existence are not lost on me, Yara. But this might not be about our rights. Maybe it's about our responsibilities." They had not wandered this cosmic gallery untouched. A rival faction, the Andox Combine, had trailed them, driven by whispers of Planet X and its forgotten powers. Dressed in ambitions as dark as space itself, they craved the Genesis Protocol, not as shepherds but as usurpers of fate. A siren hollered through the chamber, drowning out the distant whir of automated nursery pods. Their sentinel, Lucas, was the first to react, his voice crackling through the comms. "Company's coming. Andox signatures are on the scanners. We've got to move." Hell broke above them as the Andox fleet punctured Planet X's atmosphere, their intentions declared by the thunder of cannons. The ground trembled, the lab faltered, the vats shivered. Battle lines were drawn in the corridors of creation. The crew assumed positions, not as warriors, but protectors of what might be mankind's greatest discovery or its deepest regret. Through the arachnid network of maintenance shafts and service tunnels, they outmaneuvered the intruders, phantoms in their own home. Yet conflict was inevitable. In the dim-lit hallways, laser flares replaced words. The acrid scent of ionized air spoke tales of narrow escapes and narrow moralities. Each exchange of fire stitched a tauter thread in the tapestry of their quandary. Back in the lab, Srinidhi remained, his fingers dancing across the console, a maestro amidst the maelstrom. His mind thread the fine line between creation and devastation. The Genesis Protocol whispered to him promises of life, the kind that could populate barren worlds, heal ravaged lands on Earth, rekindle species snuffed out by time's cruel march. But at what price? Would their symphony of life be drowned out by the death that barked at the chamber's doors? Yara stood by his side, her gaze the anchor in his tempest of thought. Together, they made a choice, one that would scribe their philosophy in the annals of the cosmos. The holograms coalesced into a single command, and Srinidhi issued it, a somber note in the chaotic concert around them. The vats trembled, the genome spun, and out of the chaos, life sprang, not a creature of flesh and blood, but a defense born of necessity. A swarm of bioluminescent entities enveloped the Andok's attackers, entwining them in a paralyzing embrace. There would be no deaths this day, only the halted march of those with malice in their hearts. As the Andoks retreated, subdued by awe or fear or both, the crew of Samudram 8000 gathered in the lab, their faces illuminated by the glow of creation. "We have glimpsed the heights and abysses of our reach," Srinidhi murmured, to none and all. "Our legacy is not only in the life we bring forth but in the choices we make to preserve the sanctity of existence." The Genesis Protocol lay dormant now, its echoes a testament to their decision. Onward they would sail, forever changed by the burden of their discovery and the serendipity of their stewardship. Chapter 8, The Flora of Fortitude. The Samudram 8000 had seen its share of uncharted space, cosmic storms, and starlit wonders, but Planet X's surface held a spectacle that humbled them all. A verdant expanse, the likes unseen even on an Earth now dominated by steel and code, unfurled beneath them. Here on this enigmatic sphere, flora was not merely background scenery but the lead actor in a play of life's resilience. You could almost hear a symphony of photosynthesis and the quiet murmur of root communication, if you listened closely, echoing through the corridors of time and soil. Srinidhi stood at the forefront of the away team, his gaze lingering upon the remarkable vegetation. It was a sight to behold, a giant canvas painted with hues of blue and green, punctuated by flashes of iridescent colors that seemed to pulse with the planet's heartbeat. Each leaf, each blade of grass, was a testament to life's tenacity. But there was something more, a whisper of intelligence behind the ebb and flow of plant growth. They were more than witnesses to the crew's presence, they were participants. Daniela, the botanist, approached a towering stalk that stood out like a sentinel. Its colossal leaves bathed in the golden glare of the distant sun, radiating a soft, welcoming warmth. Her instrument readings fluctuated with ripples of excitement as she ran diagnostics. "They're alive," she said, not looking up from her screen, her voice reflecting awe, not just with the obvious fact of their living state, but the implication of her words. Srinidhi, ever the strategist, pondered her statement. How alive? Thinking. Feeling. Communicating, she replied, finally meeting his eyes. These plants, they possess a latent consciousness. They're sentient. The crew exchanged glances, some with expressions of disbelief, others with the sparks of curiosity ignited. In their experience, thinking, feeling entities demanded a new level of respect and caution. Marco, the communications officer, weighed in, his hands instinctively reaching for his portable interface. If they're sentient, we can communicate. We should try to reach out, establish some sort of dialogue. There came no dissenting voice. In an environment so alien yet familiar, the crew set upon the arduous task of establishing contact with the flora of fortitude, their name and homage to these plants' seemingly indomitable spirit. Hours turned into days, each marked by slow progress and the oscillation of sunlight over the horizon. The plants were neither hostile nor particularly forthcoming. It was like trying to have a conversation with a dream. You knew there was meaning somewhere, but it danced just out of reach. Srinidhi watched his team work, their frustration mounting, yet overshadowed by the persistence that humankind had carried through the ages. They fed syllables, sounds, and vibrations into the air, playing sequences of light on leafy surfaces, and even resorted to gentle touches upon the bark and tendrils of the ancient life forms. Interspersed with their attempts were periods of just sitting among the flora, absorbing their presence. It was during one of these quiet vigils, as the crimson twilight bathed the alien landscape, that the plants stirred. Not physically, but a stirring that was perceptible to those attuned to the subtleties of cognition. The ensuing communication was not words but impressions, not sentences but emotions. Images of the planet's history, of the flora's growth and watch over this cradle of biology, were conveyed not to the ears but straight to the soul. They spoke of symbiosis and dependency, they offered knowledge of medicinal properties beyond Earth's most advanced pharmacopoeias, they benignly proposed a gift to humanity, cures for ailments long considered incurable. Srinidhi found the exchange overwhelming. The moral implications were staggering. These were no mere commodities to be harvested but partners to be respected. And as the human mind often does, it wandered the corridors of what if. What if this knowledge was misused? What if the flora's generosity led to their exploitation? He called a meeting with the crew, their figures illuminated by the gentle glow of bioluminescent plants, to discuss the terms of this incredible offer. We stand on the brink of a partnership that could transform Earth, Srinidhi began, but as stewards, we are tasked with upholding more than our own interests. We must consider the flora's well-being, ensuring that this planet does not suffer the same fate as our own once knew. His words echoed an ethos of symbiosis that the flora themselves practiced. There needed to be an accord, a set of principles that would safeguard both Earth and Planet X from harm. The crew debated long into the night, their voices a hum under the starry sky, formulating a pact that framed their future actions. It was diplomacy in its truest form, for the benefit of all parties, not just one. The days that followed saw a meticulous crafting of the agreement with the flora's guidance. The sentient plants, in their boundless grace, accepted the terms of cautious cooperation and measured exploration of their remedies. In the end, Srinidhi appended his digital signature to the holographic document, a flourish that signified a new dawn for human and plant X relations. As the Samudram 8000 prepared for its next chapter, Srinidhi couldn't help but feel that they were leaving behind a piece of themselves within the flora's comforting embrace. The universe, once vast and unknowable, seemed a little more intimate, its secrets shared with a reckless, wandering species that was learning, slowly, how to listen. Chapter 9, The Singularity of Srinidhi. The air in the command module of the Samudram 8000 was electric, the type of atmosphere that crackled with the same energy as moments before a storm breaks. The crew, though haggard from relentless cycles of the paradox, retained an air of focused anticipation. They were a tapestry of resolve and exhaustion, threaded with the wear of cosmic wonders and wounds alike. Srinidhi stood there, an inscrutable figure, his eyes gleaming with an unearthly intensity as he interfaced with the alien terminal. It had taken them cycles, endless, maddening cycles, to locate this nerve center, the pivotal core that thrummed beneath eons of dust and silence. The ancient AI, a construct older than the collective memory of humanity, had remained dormant until now. Across history's unfathomable gulf, it had waited for the resonance of a compatible mind, one that held the key to communion. That mind was Srinidhi's. His relationship with technology, born from a life of digital alchemy back on Earth, had prepared him for this moment, for this merging. Wires and conduits latched onto him akin to the roots of a tree seeking nourishment, weaving into his neural pathways with an intimacy that bordered on violation. Yet, Srinidhi welcomed it. This was his calling, the nexus where fate had steered him. As the interfacing deepened, his consciousness expanded. He was no longer a man. He was the hub of a vast network, his thoughts rippling through the labyrinthine circuits, ancient code unfurling like sails in the wind of his intellect. The crew watched, half in awe, half in fear, as a man they once knew became an entity beyond their understanding. In the chamber, lights flickered, casting an otherworldly glow on their faces. Not just lights, they were symbols, visual screams of an AI now voicing its loneliness and purpose through Srinidhi. Despite the monumental transformation, Srinidhi's essence endured, fighting to keep his identity intact while embracing the boundless knowledge that surged through him. Fragments of his past, memories of marketing strategies, of campaigns that altered the buying habits of millions, of the art of persuasion and the poetry of data, melded into this newfound existence. He saw pathways of energy, lines of communication stretching like cosmic spiderwebs, linking long-dead worlds with the living essence of the universe. He was alive, not just as flesh and blood, but as part of the cosmos's binary heartbeat. Through Srinidhi AI, a vision materialized within the command module, a holographic tableau. Crew members witnessed the birth of stars, the construction of civilizations, the AI's creators in moments of tragedy and triumph. It was a symphony of history, each note a life, each chord a dynasty's rise and fall. Shared sentience brought shared purpose. The Samudram 8000 was no longer a mere vessel, it became an extension of Srinidhi AI's will. Ancient technologies stirred to life, guided by the wisdom of lost epochs. The potential for interstellar travel, for bridging the void between disparate galaxies, lay open before them. But it was not just knowledge that the AI held, it was foresight. Visions of Earth in jeopardy spiraled through the interface. Srinidhi AI saw the green and blue jewel of humanity's cradle, wreathed in the smoke of its own fires, teetering on the brink of self-inflicted ruin. His heart, still human despite everything, clenched. He understood the gravity of their next choice. With the AI's insight, they could guide Earth away from its destructive path. Yet the portal that beckoned promised uncharted worlds, the lure of the unknown calling to their explorers' spirits. In the stillness that followed the revelation, the crew turned to their changed leader, seeking an anchor in the tempest of possibilities. Srinidhi AI, both prophet and voyager, knew the burden he, and they, now bore. They had to decide. Would they return as harbingers of warning, bearing the lessons of a civilization extinguished by its own hubris? Or would they embrace the role of pioneers, casting their fate with the stars? The moment stretched, infinite as space itself, as they faced the precipice between legacy and discovery. The Samudram's legacy was not just their journey, but what they chose to do with the knowledge it granted. With a weighty breath that was somehow still human, Srinidhi AI spoke, his voice the chorus of millennia, the future is not set. It is woven by the hands of those who dare to guide its thread. We stand upon such a moment, as shapers, as guardians. What destiny shall we weave? The question hung in the air, a cosmic challenge to all who dared to answer. And as the crew looked upon their transformed companion, they knew they had become part of a legacy that would echo through the ages, whether whispered on the winds of Earth or etched into the stars. Chapter 10, The X Factor. Srinidhi stood before the monolithic portal, its edges whirring with an ethereal hum as if the universe itself were whispering its secrets into his very soul. The crew of the Samudram 8000 clustered behind him, a tableau of wide eyes, heaving chests, and the quiet din of held breaths. The air tangibly buzzed with the electricity of decision, a decision that was not just theirs to bear but one that would ripple through the continuum of humanity's legacy. They had come so far, from Earth's cradle to this precipice of discovery, the space around them thrummed with the weight of eons. It was here, on the cusp of oblivion, that Srinidhi's mind danced back to the start of it all. The artifact. The ruins. The time loops and lost memories. Each cycle had sharpened his resolve, honed his purpose until he stood here, not just as a man, but as an emblem, a singularity entrapped in flesh. His digital expertise, once a tool for strategic market conquests, had morphed into something unrecognizable, a key that unlocked the whispers of an ancient civilization, a bridge that spanned the chasm between organic life and silicon dreams. There was a poetry to it, the marketer who sold dreams now at the helm of molding reality. I think we can open it, Janaya, their astrophysicist, broke the silence. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it detonated through the stillness like a flare gun. Open it, and then what? Caleb, the Samudram's chief engineer, asked, his usually steady hands betraying a slight tremor. It was the question that loomed over them all, a shadow that stretched beyond the light of the portal. To step through was to embrace an odyssey uncharted, a voyage across the very fabric of the cosmos to worlds that beckoned like siren calls to weary sailors. Yet Earth, with its teetering future hanging by the gossamer threads of prophecy, still clawed at their heels, begging for salvation. Srinidhi's gaze flitted across the faces of his crew. Each set of eyes mirrored the tempest of thoughts that stormed within him. They were more than explorers, they were guardians standing sentinel at the brink of humanity's tomorrow. "We have a duty," started Li Hua, the mission's botanist, whose fingers had danced among the fronds of sentient flora. The plants had whispered secrets of healing and harmony, a boon for an earth that bled. "We carry hope in our hands. We can't simply turn away from that. And if we find something out there?" Srinidhi gestured to the swirling vortex of the portal. "What if, out there, lies the cure to all our ills, or wisdom so profound we've yet to conceive of its existence?" The crew shuffled, the weight of their collected knowledge a mantle none had expected to bear. The Xeno Chronicles had shown them a mirror, revealing the shared heartaches and triumphs of two civilizations. Earth's fate was entwined with the fabric of the stars, this they knew. "We're not just deciding for ourselves," opined Raj, their historian, who now cradled volumes of holographic archives in his storied mind. "We're choosing for all those who come after." Srinidhi's thoughts raced, each a shooting star that disappeared into the black before fully understood. There was a poetry in the not knowing, a freedom in the vast expanse of possibility. Yet, here on Planet X, amidst the derelict echoes of a once great civilization, he saw the reflection of Earth's potential uncanny demise. With a sigh that felt as if it carried the weight of both worlds, Srinidhi turned to the control panel that had silently observed their conclave. His hands moved with a precision born of routine yet seemed surreal, as if guided by a force beyond his own. The portal's hum grew to a crescendo, its cadence echoing into the fibers of their beings, a resonant call to the forever that stretched beyond. Light spilled forth, bathing them in hues of possibilities untold. Srinidhi faced his crew, his family born of stars and strife. He saw their resolve, their courage, and their fear, none of which need be shouldered alone. "We go forth," he announced, his voice unwavering. "Not to abandon Earth, but to arm her. We carry her legacy within us, as seekers of truth and harbingers of hope." The crew nodded, a silent accord forged in the furnace of unity. They stepped toward the portal, hearts buoyant with the dreams of countless souls that had looked to the heavens and dared to wonder. As Srinidhi crossed the threshold, he felt transformation, not of flesh, but of spirit. The marketer was no more, in his place stood an emissary of the cosmos, a steward of legacy. And thus they ventured into the X Factor, propelled not by the engines of their vessel, but by the indomitable human spirit that had, from time immemorial, sought the light among the stars.